Folks, good morning and a happy Chanukah. Today is a very, very beautiful Yontiv. It is Chanukah. And I have to tell you, Chanukah is so beautiful. It's so exciting. This is an amazing holiday. More than the gelt and the donuts and the latkes. Those latkes last night were pretty good. More than that is the profound relevance of the holiday. And while we're about to start, I just want to show you what we're going to be learning this week. We're going to be learning this book, A Victory of Light, Chassidic Heritage Series. It's a Maimer by the Rabbi. And it's available, I believe, on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle. Or you can get the book. I don't know if they do Prime now or not. But it's published by Kehot, K-E-H-O-T. K-E-H-O-T is the publishing house. Or it's a Chabad publishing house. Here you go. So the book is like this. You know, it's a discourse of the Rebbe about the profound depth and meaning and significance of Chanukah. We touched on this a couple years ago, and it was electrifying. I just want to bring this to your attention, guys. Just a couple thoughts I want to share with you before we start this discourse, which is going to take us all week. We do a little hiatus on Tanya for a week, and we'll carry next week. So I mentioned moments ago, and I'll repeat it for the video. One thing about Chanukah is amazing, which comes out of the Chabad Chassidic this teachings, is that Chanukah is one Jewish holiday which we never really won. Never really won. It's a war that we never really won. Think about it. You could say the same thing for Exodus of Egypt too, by the way. So it's not really fair to say it's the only Jewish holiday. All Jewish holidays are to be celebrated in the present tense instead of just the past tense. Right? You know, the Exodus from Egypt is not something that just happened. It's something which we're currently struggling with. Same thing with Chanukah. What happened Chanukah? Chanukah, remember, when the Greeks came into the temple, they didn't destroy the temple like the Babylonians and the Romans and the Assyrians who would have done that. What they did is that they weren't like Nazis or Cossacks or Crusaders. They weren't here to plunder, pillage, and murder. They were here to assimilate. That was their only goal. And that's the reason why they left the temple intact. If they would have destroyed the temple, the Romans would have had nothing to destroy. What the Greeks did, they were an incredibly powerful philosophy. Think about it this way. Who conquered who, the Greeks or the Romans? Who conquered who, the Greeks or the Romans? Did the Romans conquer the Greeks or the Greeks conquer the Romans? Correct. Romans conquered the Greeks, but who really conquered who? Whose culture prevailed? The Greek. It's amazing, right? The Romans conquered the Greeks, but the Greeks, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Dante, all of the philosophy of Greece actually influenced the Roman conquerors. It's amazing because their philosophy was so powerful. The Romans were brute strength, but the Greeks were a very clear worldview. What was their worldview? Their worldview was, let's worship the human body. They had these Greek gymnasiums. They would wrestle naked, and who are the celebrities? It wasn't Paris Hilton and Leonardo, what's his name, DiCaprio. You know, these people are just actors. You know, Justin Bieber. So no, he actually happens to have a little talent because he can sing. But the other guys, they just read other people's lines. The celebrities of Greece were the thinkers, the smartest people of the time. Who's the philosophy behind Avatar, behind the who are the philosophers behind the structures that are most influential in our generations? You don't know who the screenwriters are. You don't know who comes up with the ideas. You just see the actors on the front end, the klippa, as we call it, superficiality. But the Greeks, they really worshipped intellect and wisdom. To them, seichel, understanding, logic, was everything. Okay, but physicality what's the highest faculty of a human being? The brain. So they said anything which makes sense is awesome. Anything which doesn't make sense is stupid. Right? It has no place. So they come across the Jews, they see this beautiful temple, they say, nice house, guys. You like it. What are you doing here? You're worshiping God? They were like, we're about to learn this. Okay, they were like, look, you want to tell me there's a God based on rational understanding? Okay. We can go with that. You want to prove to me rationally that there is a God? I mean, we can talk about it. But now you're going to tell me that you're going to do stuff that doesn't make sense. because that God told you to do it? No.
So how did the Greeks justify this? They have all these Greek gods on Mount Olympus.
Because they that's exactly what I just said. Because they said, look, they could see it. There was empirical evidence. There was the thunder, there was war, there was the god of war, the god of this, the god of that. They could justify that they were
And they created an image which they could see and feel.
That's exactly the point. But you're gonna start talking about an invisible God. We're getting a little nervous now. Right, getting a little nervous about this invisible God. It was a little much for them to process. And now when you started getting into totally irrational laws like bris, I'm making a deal with God. What? I'm making a covenant with God. In the foreskin? Nah. Okay, X. Next. What else? Right? What else? We have our own Jewish calendar. What? Why do you have your own calendar? Because what? God told you? No. God doesn't talk to you. Sorry. Next. Move on. Okay, now kosher, they said that we could talk about. Because you know what nourishes the human body? Carbs, calories. You know what? Good. We'll keep that one. What else, right? And that's where they went through. They started saying in that Torah. What's Torah? Torah is wisdom that you got from him, this invisible God, right? They didn't like that because, and this is what we have to learn in the Maimer. I'm introducing the Maimer because there are some inconsistencies in what I'm saying. Why some yes, some not? Why can't they accept the wisdom of Torah as wisdom? And they did accept the wisdom of Torah as wisdom.
Right, it's just not a religious.
But when you say I have to study Torah all day long, and if I'm wasting any time and I'm not studying Torah, then I'm committing a sin. No. You want to study Torah because you're studying wisdom, fantastic. But you want to study it like a religion? You want to study it for faith reasons? Now you're completely overboard. You cross the line, and we're not allowing that. That's where the dreidel comes from. They would study Torah. The Jews would run out to the caves, and they would study Torah out in the caves, and they would have a sentry guarding them. And when the Greek soldiers would come, they would hide the books and pull out the dreidel. And what are you doing? We're not studying. We're playing dreidel. Okay, that's where it comes from. But the idea of a Jew's faith, it's this yarmulke that sits on top of our brain, because it's higher than the brain. It's a yarei malka, awe of the king. That's what a yarmulke means, awe of the king. That idea that you can have something that I'm constantly in awe of the king. They were like, you're stupid. What do you mean awe of the king? Right? And that's the nuance that we need to granulate in this discourse. Now, let me tell you something else. So that's the first thing I want to say to you about how relevant Chanukah is, because today we live in a society that worships intellect. If you're a scientist and you can, if you're a scientist, then you're God's, you're the best thing that ever happened. You're a doctor, you're people. I can't stand this advertising that happens in Palm Beach of the doctors. They stand like this, like 5 of them together like this. And they say, we are the be all and end all of your survival. They stand like this, like as if they are the bottom line about whether you'll live or die. So call this phone number if you want to live, because if you don't call this phone number, you're going to die, right? I mean, it's such an arrogant pose.
If you're in an accident, call Barnett.
Right, exactly. So it's this. That's the approach with which science is viewed today by many people, and they scorn the believers. Oh, you go to shul? Like really? Like what's wrong with you that you go to shul? Like what, the rabbi brainwashed you? Like you have to go to temple? Are you sick? Are you feeble? That's how they look at us. Like they condescend towards people of faith in today's in the culture. That is a culture that worships science, right? And the assimilation of ideas. A second thing I want to bring to your attention about Chanukah being so incredibly relevant. Do you think the Maccabees thought that they were anything special? Who were the Maccabees? The Maccabees were an unlikely group of inspired people. That's what they were. They were like our millionaires. That's what they were. There are millionaires that says, you know what, we've got no hope of ever turning the tide in the Jewish nation. But you know what? We're going to do what we can. That's exactly what they said. We're going to do what we can. We're going to stay loyal. The vast and overwhelming majority of the Jewish people had Hellenized, had assimilated. They changed their names, Jason, and they changed their names to all sorts of Hellenic names.
Bob.
No. Jason is actually a specific Greek name. They infiltrated into the highest echelons of Jewish life. The vast majority of Jewish people were assimilated. They were Greek wannabes, and only a small group of Jewish people remained that they were loyal to tradition of Judaism, like us millionaires, like a bunch of Chabadniks, right? And what happened? We read in the Alanistim prayer that it was a miracle of the mighty in the hands of the weak, the many in the hands of the few, right? The sinners in the hands of the righteous, right? But where did they see the hand of God? Did they say, "Oh my God, that's amazing"? Did they have a miracle on the scale of the splitting of the Red Sea? Did they have 10 crushing plagues coming upon Egypt? Did they receive the Torah Mount Sinai? Did God speak to them? No, none of that. You know, in the only time did they think that they were experiencing a time that was going one day to become perpetuated into an immortalized as a Jewish holiday forever? They didn't. They didn't have a clue.
They didn't check the calendar.
Why? Just think about it this way. They were just ordinary people trying to do their best. When they woke up the morning after, so they won the war yesterday, the day before Hanukkah. We don't celebrate the victory. It's not part. The word Hanukkah means that they rested on the 25th day. That's what it means, Hanukkah. They rested on the 25th day. The war was over before Hanukkah even started. Hanukkah was when they inaugurated the temple. And Hanukkah also means inauguration. They rededicated the temple, and that's when they couldn't find the oil, and they looked for the oil. We're going to talk about that in the discourse. So what happened here is that they find one pitcher of oil. Okay, mazel tov, but it's only good for one day. You know, we need 8 days to make new oil. So what do? Do they say, it's not going to work? It's never going to be enough. They didn't. They said, we're going to work with what we have. In the same way that they approached the daunting task of turning the tide in the Jewish nation, they said, okay, we have one pitcher of oil. We'll do one pitcher of oil. The next morning, they went to sleep. They woke up the next day, and the candles are still burning. They're like, whoa, that's weird. That's really weird. The candles are like the same place we left them last night. And they were like, what do you think's going on over here? And slowly but surely, they were like, those candles ain't going down. It was day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. They realized there's a miracle going on. Clearly, the hand of Hashem is with us. That's how they realized. Hanukkah celebrates ordinary people figuring out the presence of God in a very roundabout way. And like the Maccabees of 2,200 years ago, I want you to realize that we too today are like those Maccabees, where we don't see the hand of God. We don't think that there's anything special about us. But if you look around, you'll notice Hanukkah miracles. Think about it.
That was the Soviet Jewry. That's how I always described it.
Soviet Jewry was a miracle.
Ordinary people.
There is somebody at the door. If
Extraordinary.
somebody, do you mind getting the door? I hear the bell ring. I'm so sorry.
Who rose to extraordinary heights, took on the entire Soviet Union.
That's right. So think about the survival of Soviet Jewry. It's like, wow. After 1917 to 1991, I think it was. How did we come out of that? Think about the 6-Day War. Think about the Gulf War.
The 6-Day War, for sure, full of miracles.
Exactly. You look at to me, the 6-Day War is a Hanukkah miracle.
We studied that. I mean, it's one of the JLI courses.
Right.
Full of miracles.
Lisa, are you looking for the Hebrew class? Yeah. Oh, sorry. It's over there. Leah, it's over there in the library, in the front. That's right. You think about the Hanukkah miracle. Now, you could say, the Maccabees could have said, the oil, they could have brought in some expert science witness and said, that oil has got some extra something. There's maybe a new chemical that we didn't know about. That's why it's not burning. They could have come up with some sort of explanation,
They could have used the other oil and just waited till
The other oil is not kosher.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that. That's all part of this discourse. But you know what they said? They said, that's a miracle. Right? We can come out and say, well, the Israeli soldiers, they really are the toughest of all soldiers. And, I think it's perfectly normal to say that once one tank chased off 100 tanks of the Syrians. I mean, that makes sense, right? Right? I mean, we're fighting an uphill battle against heavily fortified Golan Heights with hidden, invisible, buried tanks under the ground. And yet they ran away when we were like, should we try going up the mountain? I don't know. Some Shmendrik soldier up there. Same thing with the what's it called brigade? The paratroopers, the Tzanchanim. In the middle of the night, the 3 a.m. meeting with the pajama meeting I think it was the paratroopers brigade. They went into Jerusalem, into the old city. The 3 a.m. pajama meeting with the cabinet and the famous meeting. And they were like, should we go in? Should we not go in? We don't arouse the Jordans' ire. I mean, Jordan's ready, whatever. And they were like, okay, let's go. And they broke in the wall and they just kept on going. And the Jordanians were just like rats scampering in the light, right? It's a miracle. Now, you could excuse it and say, well, yeah, the toughest soldiers in the world are the Israelis. Not, okay? We weren't tough for the past 2,000 years, and we're not exactly famous for our brute strength or, our cruelty. But nevertheless, we won this war, and that to me is a modern-day Chanukah miracle, which, yeah.
Did the Maccabees anticipate the miracle?
No, that's exactly what I'm trying to bring out to you.
So
They thought there was nothing special about them.
So here's my question. If you had enough oil for one, I'm using an analogy. If you were stranded somewhere, you had a gallon of water, you didn't know when you would be rescued, would you drink that entire gallon the first day and anticipate a miracle? Or would you ration it over the 8 days? Why did they use all of the oil the first day instead of saying, you know what, we'll light it for an hour today?
That's a big discussion in Jewish law. It's a big discussion, that question in Jewish law. And the answer is that you're not allowed to do anything in the temple half full. You couldn't put 1/8 of the oil. And that you whenever you do something in the temple, it's got to be complete. So they said, look, this is what we have. This is what we're going to do. This is what Hashem gave us. I am where I need to be. I have what I need. And what I don't have, I don't need. Right? They worked with what they had. But they definitely did not think that there was anything special about them. And it's like us. I mean, think of the similarity. We live today in a generation where an overwhelming amount of our fellow Jews are not observant. And it seems like it's a hopeless situation. It seems like, oh my God, how are we ever going to get back on track? Is it even possible?
So they were living in the moment and they said, tomorrow?
That's what we have. Exactly. We'll worry about it tomorrow. And also, another thing is, I want you to realize that the same way that we talk about the Maccabees, and we make such a big deal about Hanukkah, when Mashiach comes today, they will talk about the last generation of exile like we were the heroes of all time. Greater than Moses' generation, greater than Purim, greater than Hanukkah. Those guys, I mean, they were the most abused generation of all. After 2,000 years of trauma, they still figured it out. They still rocked up in shul and they kept their faith and they sat around that round table and they studied Chassidus. We will become the next Jewish holiday. We are the next Jewish holiday. And I want to tell you this. Connecting into the Parsha of the week. You know that when the brothers sold Joseph. When the brothers sold Joseph, do you think how would the brothers have reacted if they knew that this story was going to be recorded in posterity? How would they have behaved differently? I do not think they would have sold him at all. They'd be like, "Oh, hi, brother. Nice to see you. How do you do?" No, maybe not, but they would have been more civil, right? If they knew that they were going to be recorded for notoriety for the rest of the time. And the Talmud actually says that two other individuals, Aaron and Boaz, also. I'm not going to bring up the whole story, but the Talmud says that had they known that they were going to be recorded on camera, they would never have behaved in the way that they did. They would have done a much better job. And I want you to realize, if you knew that you are being recorded on camera right now, and that your choices today are going to be recorded in the book of redemption, that will be celebrated and studied and marveled at with the coming of the Mashiach. Think about that. How they would look at Berger and say, "Wow, here's a guy after 99 years of losing the World Series. His father found a way, and he got him to shul, and he turned around his faith, right?" And for many of us, it's very, very difficult. We have to stand up to parents and siblings and even spouses that scorn and mock us, and children that mock us, and how hard that is, and how much tremendous strength that takes. This, my friends, is the theme of the discourse we're about to learn. It's the theme of Hanukkah, which is the courage to stand to stand up when everybody else is laying flat on the ground. Okay, I'm going to start it off today with the beginning of the discourse. Does anybody have it on Kindle yet? Good. Okay, lots of comments coming in. A lot of good mornings. Newmans are with us. Winston in Indonesia. Prevention is better than the cure. Good morning, David. Miracle Ethiopian Jews, very nice. And Fran, reality shows are pretty awful sometimes. What does that tell you? Okay, good. So here goes. I'm starting on page 22. If you have the book, great. If you don't have the book, then just listen along. If you want to get it on Kindle, you can download it from the link that Winston just posted. Thank you. With assistance of heaven, this discourse was delivered on Motzei Shabbos Parshas Miketz, the Shabbos of Chanukah, 1977, which is a very interesting time because the Rebbe had a heart attack on Simchas Torah of that year. And the Rebbe recovered from that heart attack, which was very, very dangerous, on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, which would have been 25 or 27 days prior to this discourse. So this is right after the Rebbe's recovery and a new era in the Rebbe's dissemination. Quoting the Talmud in Shabbos 21b, the sages taught. This is the introduction to the discourse. The mitzvah of the Chanukah lamp, when it comes to the lighting of the Chanukah lamp, Beis Shammai says that on the first day one lights 8 flames. Why would you light 8 flames? We'll talk about that in a moment. And from then on, you decrease progressively to the second day is 7, and the third day is 6, until the last day you light 1 candle. You decrease progressively. Beis Hillel, however, says that on the first day one lights 1 flame, and then you add another flame, so that on the 8th day you light 8 flames. Beis Shammai's reasoning is that the kindling should correspond to the bulls of Sukkot. The bull of Sukkot. What happens on Sukkot? On Sukkot, there's 8 days of Sukkot. We offer 70 bulls. On the first day, we offer a large amount, and every day we go lower. We decrease in the amount of bulls that we offer. As on all Jewish holidays, animal offerings were brought in the Holy Temple for the holiday. But on Sukkot, there were among them were bulls, 13 of which were brought on the first day, 12 on the second day, and so on until 7. On the 7th day, there were 7 brought, bringing the total amount of bulls offered on Sukkot to 70. 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, right? Corresponding to the 70 primary nations of the world. So Beis Shammai maintains that like the pattern of the bulls of Sukkot, the lights of Chanukah should progressively diminish day by day. Beis Hillel's reasoning is that one must ascend and increase in holy matters. Now, that's the Talmud. Right? That's the Talmud. We haven't learned any Chassidus yet. Just a quick explanation. The Rebbe makes a magnificent, unbelievable expose in Talmud. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argue all the time in Talmud, right? There's like not a chapter in Talmud about Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai don't argue. What are they arguing about? Is it just you say this, I say that, black, white, yeah, kosher, not kosher? No, that's not what it is. The Rebbe explains an amazing worldview that each of them had. And Tanya explains it in the introduction to Tanya, which we're about to get into next week, God willing. Speaks about with the root of their different souls. The Beis Shammai was rooted in the sphere of kindness, and Beis Hillel was rooted in the sphere of gevurah, which is discipline. But how that manifests is like this: Beis Shammai always sees the actual. Beis Hillel always sees the potential. So, on the first day of Hanukkah, how much power was in the oil? There was 8 days of power in there. On the second day, there was 7 days of power. So that's why you light 8, 7, 6, because there's actual. This is how much power you got. Beis Hillel sees potential. On the first day, no, I got it the other end. Beis Hillel is actual. How much burnt on the first day? 1. No, I'm sorry, I said it backwards. Beis Hillel is actual. On the first day burnt 1. Second day burnt 2. Right? The third day burnt 3. Right? That makes sense, right? The potential is the other way around. If you see potential, on the first day it's got the potential for all 8. On the second day it's got the potential for only 7. On the third day it's got the potential for 6. And if you look at every single debate in the entire Talmud between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, it's an unbelievable study when you analyze every single debate of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. It is correct in every single instance where they argue about potential and actual incredible, right? Okay, so that's interesting. Obviously, we go by the way of Beis Hillel. When Mashiach comes, by the way, we're going to flip over to Beis Shammai. That's the law. when Mashiach comes, all the rulings are going to go according to Beis Shammai, which is also interesting. The Rabbi explains that because now we go by actual, then we go by potential. We'll learn about that significance of that. But now, the anomaly pointed out by the Alter Rebbe, remember the Alter Rebbe is the author of the Tanya, right? The anomaly pointed out by the Alter Rebbe is well known. He asked the question, what's the connection between the Chanukah lamps and the bulls of Sukkot? What's the connection? Bulls of Sukkot? Chanukah? Chanukah lamps? Like what? The Jewish holiday? There's got to be something more that meets the eye here than just random, oh yeah, we got another Jewish holiday that does it that way, so let's just take that pattern. We don't do stuff like that. There's got to be a deeper significance. Now, when you study the Talmud, we don't have the tools to go beyond that depth. And there's various commentaries, and they give us the commentary, but only Chassidus introduces us to the soul of Torah, a deep dive into the essence of what's going on, to be able to ask such a question and to give the answer that we're going to be giving. The question is especially compelling in view of the Tzemach Tzedek's statement. The Tzemach Tzedek was the third Rebbe, that Beis Hillel's objection to Beis Shammai's view is based only on the principle of one must descend in holy matters. Beis Hillel doesn't come in and say, there's no connection between Chanukah and Sukkot. He doesn't say that. He says, no, you're right. It is the way that's the way we should be doing it because of the Sukkot bulls. The only thing is that in matters of holiness, you always have to increase, you can't go down. That was the only technicality with which he disagrees. So it seems like they both agree that Chanukah lights are connected to Sukkot. Many sources explain that Chanukah and Sukkot are connected because they're both 8-day holidays. The number 8 signifying the level that is beyond Hishtalshelus. Now, this is a beautiful concept. What does it mean? Hishtalshelus means the chain of being, or the sequence of progression, or the cycle of nature. Cycle of nature is a cycle of 7. Everything in this world is made up of 7, the 7 days of the week, based on 7 days of creation, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 notes of music, 7 physical properties of any physical object. The number 7 is a number associated with nature. The number 8 is supernatural, which is why 8 on its side maybe is a symbol of infinity, which is why when you make a covenant with the divine, you do it on the 8th day, which is why every holiday celebrating a miracle has 8 days to it, right? So that's what they'll say, and this is very interesting. This actually comes from commentaries in the Talmud from the Rashba, who says that here, look, in numerical terms, the number 7 signifies the order of creation, as it symbolizes the natural order of existence. 7 days in the week, 7 metaphysical heavens. 8 conversely embodies that which is beyond 7, beyond the natural order. This is from the Rashba. Chanukah and Sukkot, both 8-day holidays, that embody the beyond nature dimension, as will be discussed further here, which is an interesting connection, okay? However, this itself requires clarification, since what connection do Sukkot and Chanukah have beyond the level of to the level of beyond Hishtalshelus, which causes them to be 8 days? So why are Sukkot and Chanukah beyond nature? Think about it. What is so special about Sukkot that makes it infinite? And what is so special about Chanukah that makes it infinite? Why is Chanukah infinite? So you'll say, huh?
You say it lights the darkness.
Oh, that is the answer. I was going to say a much more shallow answer. It was a miracle. The oil burned for 8 days. That's a much more superficial answer. The oil burned for 8 days. Anytime there's a miracle, you'll find 8. But today we're going deeper. There's miracles all around us. Then we'd be doing everything 8. I mean, think about it. The fact that we Jews are still alive, it means is a miracle, right? We should be doing everything in 8s. What you're talking about, Keith, is magnificent. This is the essence of where we're going. Chanukah has the power to illuminate and transform the darkness. And that is an extraordinary quality, right? And that how we do that, how that is the bedrock of the Chanukah story, what the Greeks wanted to do to us, how we fought them, how we beat them, and more importantly, how we apply that concept in our lives today. That is the essence of the Chanukah story. Let's go just a little bit further here, okay? So another question. Just we're going to introduce the questions today. Another question. The sages instituted the Chanukah lamps because of the miracle that occurred with the lamps of the temple of the Beis HaMikdash. How many lamps were there in the temple? In the temple candelabra?
7.
7. There were 7. Why does the Hanukkah have 8 lamps and days? When in the temple, which is what we're commemorating, there were 7. There were only 7 lamps. Like, where did this come from? There's clearly a connection to the number 8, right? Another point that requires understanding. The Hanukkah lamps are being compared not to the holiday of Sukkot in general, but specifically to the bulls, the offerings of Sukkot. It would seem, however, that this comparison is somewhat strained, as the Hanukkah lamps relate to the menorah, right? Where that miracle occurred. While the bulls of Sukkot were offered which part of the temple? On the altar. Which altar? The outer altar. They were very different services, the altar service and the menorah. The menorah was inside of the building, the Kodesh, the holy. The altar was outside. And admittedly, it was where only the priests were allowed to go, but still, it was a completely different service. Now, the menorah and the altar are 2 different vessels, especially as they're explained in Kabbalah and Chassidus. And the lamps and offerings are 2 different services. So much so that in the Torah reading that we read today, when Aharon notices that all the priests, the presidents of each tribe, brought the animal offerings, and he was left with nothing, Hashem says to him, your service is greater than theirs. When you will elevate the lamps, when you will light the menorah, that's going to be greater than their service, which is the altar. So when push comes to shove, Hashem says the menorah is greater than the altar, right? And will never cease, right?
But how did they get a Chanukah when they originally just have this 7 branched menorah?
So that's the question. How do we get a menorah?
Right. How do we get there?
That's the question.
Right.
Let me give you the full story here. After the leaders of all the Jewish tribes offered their sacrifices for the inauguration of the temple, of the tabernacle, with the exception of the tribe of Levi, Aaron felt bad, thinking that neither he nor his tribe would have any part in the tabernacle service. God therefore told Moshe to inform Aaron, by your life, your service is greater than theirs. Since you will light and prepare the menorah, you are fit for greater than this. The sacrifices are only offered as long as the base of Mikdash stands. But the lights of the menorah will shine forever. And all the blessings that I gave you to bless my children will never cease. This is a quote from the Medrash. Ramban says, another Medrash, he quotes, God tells Moses, tell Aaron that there will be another Hanukkah, another inauguration when the kindling of the lights will take place. In other words, don't feel bad that you're not doing the altar. I'm going to give you much greater. You're going to have a Hanukkah. I will perform miracle salvation and inauguration for Israel through your descendants. This will be the inauguration of the Hasmoneans, which is the Hanukkah story. Rabban continues that the lights of the menorah will never cease, for this alludes to the Hasmonean Hanukkah lights, which will continue throughout exile, even after the destruction of our temple. Now, what then is the relationship between the Hanukkah lamps and the Sukkah bulls, right? So we've got 2 very good questions. First of all, the first question is, 3 questions. First of all, what's the connection between the Hanukkah and Sukkot in general? Then we ask the question, why is the 8-lamp menorah related to the 7-lamp candelabra in the temple? Then we ask the third question, what's really the connection between the altar and the menorah, which really are 2 different services? And finally, our fourth question is relating to the timing. Why we must also understand why the mitzvah of the Hanukkah lamp, now the Hanukkah lights come from the menorah in the temple, right? So when is the mitzvah to light the Hanukkah lights? After dark, after sunset. When is the lamps lit in the temple menorah? In the daytime. Then normally, here is well known, the base HaMikdash lamps were kindled from Plaga Mincha, which was 3/4 of the way throughout the day, was still broad daylight outside, an hour and a quarter before sunset. If the Hanukkah lamps were established because of the miracle that involved the base HaMikdash lamps, the temple, and especially since everything the sages established, they established it similar to the biblical, it would seem appropriate that their kindling time would be the same as that of the base HaMikdash lamps. Why then is this discrepancy that we light the menorah only after dark? And this, Keith, speaks to your point. We light the menorah only after dark. The temple was lit in the daytime, right? And we're going to where you were headed over there. So we'll carry on this discourse this week, folks. Yeah.
Why do we not? Because Hanukkah is so significant, why don't we choose the first 2 days? And
It's not biblical.
Because it's not in the Torah.
It's not biblical, yeah. And by the way, where we're gonna end this discourse is going to answer that question as well. If you remember that question, I'm just gonna give you a spoiler, and that is like this: that Shabbos and Yontif is holy, right? The weekday is the mundane. The purpose of the Chanukah, the power of the Chanukah lights, the infinity of Chanukah, the 8. It's not just in the fact that they're all burned for 8 days. There's an energy in Chanukah which is truly infinite, which has the power to transform all darkness into light, even the mundane into holy. Shabbos and Yontif is already holy. The goal of Chanukah is to illuminate the dark. That's why you light the Chanukah candles facing the outside, not like the menorah on the inside. That's why the menorah is lit at night, not in the day, like in the temple menorah. Shabbos candles are lit by day, Chanukah candles are lit by night.
No, you don't put them in the window. Shabbos candles.
That's right, because the Shabbos are to illuminate the house. Chanukah is to illuminate the outside. The purpose of Chanukah is to transform the world. What kind of world? A world so dark that worships the intellect. A world so stuck in its way that it cannot recognize its own master. That's what Chanukah comes to illuminate. All right?
So why did they wanted they were looking for 8 vessels.
The 8 what?
They wanted 8 vessels.
It took 8 days. No, they only had 7 lamps to the menorah in the
So in other
temple.
words, okay. So
But it took 8 days to get new oil.
they really only wanted it to burn
become
7
kosher.
days, but it burned 8 days?
No. There was enough oil to light the whole menorah one day.
Correct.
But they needed 8 days to make new kosher oil.
You had to go
It took
travel.
4 days to go and 4 days to come back to that place. And if they had a Concorde, maybe it'd go quicker. But they didn't. So it was an 8-day trip. Nothing to do with the amount of candles.
They had oil, they just didn't have kosher.
That's right.
To go get kosher
That's right.
oil.
Now, the Greeks, by the way, they said, light your menorah. We don't want to hurt your menorah. You light the menorah, just use oil from Costco. Don't tell me that there's something, don't tell me that there's something special with this red wax seal of the high priest, because that's irrational. And we're not into anything irrational. That was the Greek approach. And the Jews, they had plenty of oil in the temple. It was all nicely on the cabinets. They didn't even break it. It was beautiful. All they did is they cracked the seals open. That's all that they did. The pure oil, the holy oil, that was their problem. Now we're going to talk about the significance of why oil specifically. What is oil and what does it represent? All right? Chazak. We are the light, friend. You got it. All right, guys. If you can order the book, it'd be nice for you to follow along. Take care. God bless you and have a happy Hanukkah, guys.
It's not published.
What?